Hi, today I'm going to do a tune by Dan R MacDonald. It's called Lime Hill. And Dan R MacDonald was a Cape Breton fiddler back in basically the 40s and 50s. He lived from 1911 to 1976. I did a little research on him. I was able to talk to Barbara McGone. And Barbara McGone MacDonald, her father was John Archie MacDonald. And he knew Dan R quite well. They worked together in Detroit and were in a band together there in Detroit called the Five MacDonald Fiddlers. And they put out a couple of recordings, which I had the pleasure to listen to one of them. And it's really good Cape Breton music. And Cape Breton, of course, is a place that's, most of the people in Cape Breton come from Scotland. They're immigrants from around the mid 1700s to mid 1800s. And they came in droves in what is commonly called the Highland clearances. So most of the Highland culture of Scotland is kind of removed and isolated from the rest of Scotland. They actually back then considered themselves a separate kind of culture from lowland Scotland. They're a kind of separate strain of Celtic, basically, is the Highlands. And that includes the West Highlands and the Islands. And for many years, they didn't even speak English. They spoke Gaelic. So it was that culture, that unique Highland culture, that got kicked off their land due to economic and social issues. And they ended up on boats and came by the thousands to places like Cape Breton. They also came to the States. Many of the Scots ended up in Appalachia. And we have Appalachian music is this kind of combination of African American music and Scottish music and Irish music, all kind of getting blended together in the Appalachians. Cape Breton was a much more isolated place in Nova Scotia. The Scots there, having come from the Highlands, they had a very strong identity as Scottish, and they kept that through the generations. And it's just basically been a very precious culture in terms of its love of its heritage and its love of its music. I think the music has really been a huge part of that preservation of culture. And uniquely, music has been at the forefront of the Cape Breton identity. So it makes it a pretty unique place from a folk music point of view. It's like they really love their music. Similarly to the Appalachians, honestly, and for the same reasons. You know, Scots really loved their music, and so that's kind of the heritage of Cape Breton. So Dan R MacDonald, he lived in the 50s. He was a Cape Breton fiddler. He wrote around 2,000 tunes. Very prolific writer. In World War II, he was stationed. He was in the military, and he was stationed in Scotland, ironically, and was able to meet Scottish fiddlers there, and played quite a bit on the BBC radio. And they recorded some stuff of his then. Some of his albums from that period exist today. And so he kind of became well known in Scotland at that time. And this would have been would have been in his 20s at that time. This is called Lime Hill, and I've heard Hanukkah Castle play it. I've heard the Rankin family play it. I heard it a lot in sessions. It's a great tune. Here it is.